Hello, America. All right, so what do we know that's coming out right now? We have the NFL taking a knee. That has become the big problem. I'm going to talk about this briefly because while it is in the mainstream media, it's not, to me, the most important thing that's going on right now. There are a lot of things being ignored, but I'm going to give my take on it. Also, because right now, what I plan on talking about, Equifax. There's something not right. And I'm going to tell you why. It's going to be very important for you to tune in. It's going to be very important for you to focus on everything that I'm saying and make a decision for yourself. If you're invested in Equifax, you're going to need to pay attention closely because you may want to jump ship now. Because these type of practices mean bad things are going to happen later on. But first, we're going to begin with the NFL and taking a knee right now.
All you have to do is stay a minute, just take your time. The clock is ticking, so stay. All you have to do is wait a second. Your hands on mine. The clock is ticking, so stay. All you have to do is stay.
The center for everything that is political and American. You're listening to the Garrison Douglas Show.
All right, welcome to the program, everybody. This football stuff is becoming a nuisance. It is becoming a nuisance to me. Not because I can't handle someone taking a knee to the national anthem. To be quite honest, when I tune into a football game, I actually miss all that stuff altogether. So to me, the politics, it doesn't even affect me to that degree right now. This debate, however, it's something else. Is taking over everything. We are ignoring major news stories. We're not looking deeply into the things that are happening. By the way, Tom Price resigned today as Secretary of Health and Human Services. He had been entrenched with this thing going on with him spending over $1 million on chartering planes. Now, he did say that he was going to pay back every cent towards his individual seat that he utilized. He was going to reimburse the entire charter plane budget, but he was going to handle his individual seat for all those flights. That wasn't enough. But he's gone now, which means we spent $55 million on an election to replace him when he was only going to be away for 7 months. It's funny how life works out. But no, I'm not talking about that tonight. I'm talking about the NFL. The question that comes to my mind when I hear all this fighting around the NFL is, should politics ultimately be left to the elite? Should most Americans just keep their nose out of politics? Should only a few be truly focused on what's happening with our government? I miss the days when there wasn't a political message in sports. Players would go on the field, play their hearts out, and we'd all go home. I read that post on Facebook, and for a moment, I thought about when I was a kid. I was reminded of a time when my friends and family would watch the Super Bowl and all vote on which was the best commercial. There were so many good ones. I still remember the Doritos commercial. When the young boy had met his mother's boyfriend, or someone was taking his mother out on a date, and the boyfriend, or what do you want to call him, started talking to the kid, and the kid told him to lean in, and he slapped him and said, "Keep your hands off my mama." And they gave him some Doritos. And that was a funny one. And then I remember the Office Linebacker, classic through Reebok. There were so many good commercials, and we just sat around laughing and laughing and laughing. It was one of our favorite pastimes. But a couple years ago, I sat with friends and we watched Super Bowl, and during halftime, we all started to stare at each other. We had these looks on our faces. Like, I can see the faces, just they're etched into my brain. It is so vivid, that memory, that moment of realization. We had realized that the era of fun and games were over. These commercials were no longer funny. These commercials were no longer entertaining. They were educational. I remember when we began talking about it, we were, for lack of a better word, saddened at the realization. And for me, I was internally upset. I was trying to process all of these emotions. One, my team was losing badly. And two, there was no escape. I couldn't even enjoy the commercials anymore. But then I also was just wondering how we got to this point. Well, when I try to understand the present, I always look towards history for guidance. And that's when I remembered that this happened before. It's happened quite a bit, actually. We can look at the Olympic protesters who put their fists in the air to show pride and black power. It goes back to Jackie Robinson in baseball. We've seen it for as long as most of us can remember. And it's because of one important characteristic of America. Piece by piece reform. Our nation's history has shown that we have a pattern of settling for small fixes to big problems and putting our heads in the sand when the remaining problems begin to become a burden. We do this with virtually every issue and towards almost every group of people in America at one point or another. We did it to the Native Americans when we displaced them from their homes onto reservations. We did it to African Americans when we freed them from slavery but banned them from doing anything else but working in servitude to others. We do it every day to the national debt, where we say there's a problem and never actually do anything about it. We did it to factory workers and coal miners who lost their jobs due to a poor execution of NAFTA. We did it to 9/11 first responders who were only seeking a renewal of their health insurance to treat their 9/11 related injuries, but couldn't get a single meeting with a U.S. senator. We do it continuously to our soldiers who we send overseas, but then ignore them when they return. Except at sporting events, of course. It's what we do. So when we ignore these issues and tell all these groups of people to keep their problems out of our sports, are we simply just telling them and our leaders that we aren't interested in being involved in politics? Are we not just telling the world that we believe only the elites should be engaged in politics? You cannot be bothered by political issues. That's what you're saying. So do we believe that only the elites should be engaged in politics? That's what we're saying. The answer is a resounding yes. That is what we are putting out there. You can't ignore these people or our nation's most entrenched problems Monday through Saturday and then not expect it to leak into your Sunday football games. Why? Because they know that that's the only place they can get your attention. They tried sending emails. You put it in your spam folder. They tried posting it on Facebook. You unfriended them because you were tired of seeing their political posts. They tried sending you letters. You threw it in the trash. They tried calling you at home. You disconnected your landline and got a cell phone because you were tired of all the calls. They tried marching in the streets, but thieves and criminals took advantage of the protests to come out and loot and destroy property, which you then blamed on the protesters. They tried going on the news, and you called it fake news. And turned off your television. They tried going to Congress, and they acted like they listened. But each of these individuals, each of these groups, veterans, African Americans, 9/11 first responders, coal miners, factory workers, they were nothing more than talking points for an election. They were exploited for political gain. Politics is having a discussion over who gets what, when, where, and why. I don't believe that discussion should be left to just a small group of people. However, this is what you get when the majority of your nation's population runs away from the discussion. So to answer the question, should politics be left to the elite? No. but it is. And it will continue to be if we continue to behave in this manner. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Garrison Douglas Show.
T-Mobile's Unlimited now includes Netflix on Us. That's right, Netflix on Us. Get 4 unlimited lines for just $40 each, taxes and fees included. And now, Netflix included. So go ahead, binge on Us. Another reason why T-Mobile is America's best unlimited network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Equifax. I don't even know what to... My brain physically won't let me be at peace with this. Equifax. It's the now ugly duckling of the credit bureaus. They're still in pretty deep trouble over their massive security breach. However, as I said a couple weeks ago, they aren't in as much trouble as you would think they were. They appear to be on the path to redemption in the stock market, despite having so many problems hit them day after day. This isn't supposed to happen the way it is, folks. The stock market is a very finicky system. The stock market doesn't like surprises. The stock market likes to know everything. Good surprises make it feel great. It's like a jolt of Red Bull into the veins. Shoots your stock prices way up. Bad surprises, it's like getting into a sudden car crash. Your heart drops, just like your stock prices. But that's not what's happening right now. Before we dive into this further, let's first review the big story. What exactly happened? First, Equifax announced that they have been victim to a hack, and that as many as 143 million consumers have been affected. We know that they learned of the hack back in March, but never disclosed it. We also now know that 3 executives sold $1.8 million in shares just days after Equifax discovered the breach. But before it disclosed it to the public. Their spokeswoman said previously that the executives, who, mind you, included the company's chief financial officer, who are not aware of the breach at the time of the sales. Which, let's stop there. And I'm not going to go too far because this goes into the story later on. But I'm supposed to believe as a consumer or as an investor that the largest security breach in the history of the digital era managed to go completely past or over the head of the chief financial officer or the corporate VP, or the president of U.S. Information Solutions, or the president of Workforce Solutions. These folks just, for over 5 months, had no idea that there was a security breach. How is that even supposed to be possible? To me, we're not talking about you being aware that, I don't know, the ice machine in the break room's broken. Or possibly that there was a new product and R&D being put together, and there was a little snag. Nothing major, but just a little snag that's delaying the reveal for a couple days. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a massive security breach. You compromised 143 million consumers' confidential information. You are supposed to be a credit security agency and failed to secure your consumers' credit information. That you failed to do that, and you were unaware. To me, that is the equivalent of being a oxygen mask salesman and selling masks and finding out that the masks you're selling have killed 143 million people, because instead of it actually putting the oxygen inside your body, it's actually sucking the oxygen out of your body. Your whole purpose of existence is to secure this data. That is your whole purpose. Sure, you have other little things that you do, but your sole purpose, your main one, most important role, is securing this data. And when you fail to uphold that main responsibility, you're telling us that you had no idea? Well, I don't believe that. And apparently neither does the Justice Department, because we also now know that the Justice Department is investigating the sales as well. So what else do we know? Well, as of September 26th, Equifax had replaced their CEO due to, quote, poor handling of the crisis. Which means that now 3 out of the 4 executives aware of the hack are now gone. And finally, here's what else we know from this story. Equifax's stock has gone up almost every single day, despite having, in their own words, poorly handling the crisis. How do you poorly handle a crisis and your stock prices go up? How do you have the largest security breach in the history of the digital era and your stock go up? Now, I will mention this. At the mention, as soon as the announcement came out, their stock did drop quite a bit, actually. But it dropped and stopped. It bottomed out. Despite nothing being done. It just stopped on its own. As if there was something that gave the market some sort of confidence. Not a lot to keep it from dropping, but just enough to keep it from continuing to drop. Now here comes the question. Why? Why did the market feel confident? Well, we always truly know why something like this happens. The real question, though, is who and what is putting their hand on the scale. That's what we're talking about right now, folks. So let's dive into this. I need you to remember this name for me, okay? Just remember this name. T. Rowe Price and Associates. Okay? Just stay with me there. Because that's a very important name to the story. So we know, first, that Equifax was hacked in March of 2017, earlier this year. And they disclosed their breach in September of 2017. So we know that there was a total of about 6 months in between the hack and the disclosure. Now, the important thing that we're going to have to discover here, or the things we're going to have to go through, is what happened in between the hack and the disclosure of the hack, specifically the breach. Well, once the hack occurred, strangely, without an announcement, a lot of their biggest investors began to, how should I say, pull out. There was not pull everything out, but they were selling a lot of their stock without purchasing any new ones. So that's what we do know, that portion. But in the midst of all of this, in the midst of these investors, these banks and private financial institutions selling a lot of their stock or shares of Equifax, we see one person or one entity come in. T. Rowe Price and Associates. Now, in between March and June, T. Rowe Price and Associates bought 12.5 million shares in Equifax. At the time, that would value out to around $730 million between March and June. Their Mid-Cap Growth Committee, which has been around since, I believe, 2005, had nothing invested in Equifax. That committee had nothing to do with Equifax. But yet, out of nowhere, they bought 3 million shares in Equifax. So that's what goes into that 12.5 million shares that they bought. That's what the Mid-Cap Growth Committee did. These purchases now make them one of the largest, not one of, they are actually the largest investors in Equifax. They're also now one of the top 5 controlling owners. They sit on the board. They got the big dollars. Now, what we also know was that the same executives who we mentioned who sold shares, $1.8 million worth of shares in the company right before the announcement, had also sold millions of dollars worth of shares back in between March and June. The CFO didn't start selling his shares until June. So, what I ask is, what was it at T. Rowe Price and Associates that made them all of a sudden invest so heavily into Equifax during a time when everyone else was starting to sell? Why would they do that? Well, because they were buying the shares that were being sold by the CEOs or by the executives, in part. And because their hands are on the scale. T. Rowe Price and Associates is a big fish, ladies and gentlemen. If they're involved in your company, you are seen as stable. Let's dig even deeper. In the midst of T. Rowe Price and Associates purchasing these shares right after the hack, the CEO of Aquiline Incorporated, who sits on the board of T. Rowe Price and Associates, had bought controlling interest in a company called CARP. Now, what does CARP do? They're an internal security agency. They deal with security. They specialize in security breaches. They specialize in a whole host of things that are central to a corporation's bottom line, to ensure that these things don't happen, and to help find out how did it happen if they did happen. This is what Aquiline bought controlling interest in on June 30th of 2017. At the same time, T. Rowe Price and Associates is purchasing controlling shares or massive shares of Equifax. Does that sound like a coincidence to you? That Equifax experiences the largest hack in the history of the digital era. Some of their investors are pulling out. And then T. Rowe Price and Associates, just out of the clear blue sky, starts buying millions of dollars worth of shares at the same time as one of their board of directors purchasing the controlling interest in a security agency that focuses on corporate security. And is it also interesting that all of the individuals, all of the agencies that were starting to sell shares in Equifax were all companies that were heavily that T. Rowe Price and Associates had also heavily invested in. Does that sound like a coincidence? And ladies and gentlemen, if you are a massive investor into a company that sells water, for instance, if you're the largest investor in a company that sells water, and you find out of the clear blue sky that that company has been, that their water supply is poisoned, and their stock market or their stock prices are cratering to this news, and that they knew about it 6 months before they announced. So there's been 6 months worth of poisoned water just going out there, affecting millions of people's water, affecting millions of people's health. Then on top of it, they're not really dealing with it. Even though they announced it, there's not much really going on. Are you going to stay invested in that company? Or are you going to try and cut your losses before they drop any further? I can tell you this, for me, I like to hold on to hope. And so initially I might say, hey, let's just see how this goes. Let's see how they handle this chaos. Let's give them a little bit. And if they don't handle it, then I'm out. Or at least I'm going to lessen my burden. I'm going to take a lot of that off my books, so that way I'm not getting hurt too badly by this. But more than likely, I'm going to try and get all out, because I'm just going to keep losing money at this point. So why, ladies and gentlemen, if you have that same thought process, why then did T. Rowe Price and Associates take the biggest loss out of everyone and just stay? Not even they didn't sell a single share. And they announced that they have no intentions to do so. Why would they do that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, for two reasons. One, I believe, I can't say for certain, but I believe that T. Rowe Price and Associates knew about the hack way back in March and also failed to disclose it. I believe they helped try and cover it up, to try and deal with the fallout, if there was any. And then two, they aren't selling because they know that they are the only thing standing in between Equifax's stock continuing to crater and it going up. They are the only thing standing in between that scenario. If T. Rowe Price and Associates stays, the stock stabilizes. And no matter what happens, no matter what sort of foolishness Equifax pulls, like getting rid of your CEO mid-crisis, no matter what happens, the stock won't be affected. It won't drop any further because T. Rowe Price and Associates gives the market certainty that this problem isn't as big. Otherwise, they would have been long gone. So now the prices have stabilized and can now go back on a rebound. Which is why, since the hack, Equifax has gained $15 a share back. in which they had lost. Even after everything that's been going on day after day, they have regained $15 a share in their stock prices. And the trend continues to show that it's going to go up. You're probably asking yourself, one, what does it have to do with me? And two, we're probably first in this order. One, why would they do so? Why would they do it? Why would they be interested in helping Equifax maintain stability? The answer, I can't tell you right now. We're still looking into it. I'm still looking into it. There's a lot of connections. And this, I can't say this is for certain. But at the very least, this poses a lot of questions. A lot of dots are connecting. But that one important one, very crucial question, as you asked, why would they do it, still is yet to be answered. And I will not rest until I answer that question. And the second question you're asking is what does it matter to me? I already submitted my paperwork to Equifax and I'll be protected credit-wise. Or I don't have any shares in Equifax, so there's nothing for me to be concerned about. Here's why this is important. T. Rowe Price & Associates is a financial institution. They have a fiduciary responsibility to make money for their shareholders. They can only keep this game going for so long. They can only continue to have these massive losses on their books for so long. Eventually, if Equifax can't get their act together, T. Rowe Price Associates is going to have to eventually join the rest of the world and begin to pull out. And at that point, chaos. Every other credit bureau who wasn't even affected by the hack saw their stock prices drop at the news. Because like I said, the stock market doesn't like surprises. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think that this is going to be an isolated incident, you're wrong. All it takes is for Equifax to continue to drop for all the other dominoes to fall. Trust in security, trust in credit is going to ripple through the markets. If people are afraid to use credit, then what is the purpose of having credit institutions? And we will feel that pain on Main Street. I tell you this now. This is important. This is the biggest story that's never been told right now. And I'm going to continue telling it. I'm going to continue talking about it because I know how important it is. But unfortunately, I'm all out of time. So I ask that you join me back here on Monday. We're going to talk about a lot more other things. Make sure you go to the Garrison Douglas gift shop. Check out all our cool gear. Check out what we could do, all right? But in the meantime, have a safe weekend. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe. I'll see you back here on Monday, and thank you for tuning in to the Garrison Douglas Show.